At international football matches, the flags we fly of our country and our patron saints mean everything. Like tribal imagery, we paint our faces and wrap ourselves in our saints' logos. But I'm a Christian and a black Englishman, and I wouldn't feel comfortable wrapping the flag of St. George around myself. I grew up in an England where I felt football hooligans and racists hijacked the flag of St. George and made it a symbol of violence. And like many others, I've become ashamed of what this flag has come to represent. So I've been on an extraordinary journey to find out who the patron saints of Britain and Ireland really are. I've uncovered an amazing story that involves legends and folklore, bloodshed and sectarian war, saintly veneration and sacred relics. I've discovered some of our patron saints could have been fictitious characters, while others originate in the Middle East, where I've found powerful religious crossovers.
For Muslims, he is Al-Khadr. For Christians, in English, is called Saint George.
St. George, and they're all the same?
For one person.
Our patron saints were radical extremists of their time.
He would have been a fundamentalist, apocalypticist, millenarian.
Their lives became mixed with fantastical legends, and some were horror stories.
When she wouldn't give in to him, he raped her.
He raped her?
He raped her.
My journey has asked one vital question. In our increasingly multi-faith world, are our patron saints outdated Christian icons, or do they have a real role to play in the 21st century? Patron saints have always mattered. Why? Because they protect their nations and support the powerful. So it should be of no surprise that here, at the heart of the British government, the Houses of Parliament, they still watch over our elected MPs today. To get a clearer picture of who our patron saints were, I'm starting with one of the few places where all four are depicted together. At Westminster, on the ceiling of the lobby between the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the patron saints tower above. But seeing them together raises many questions. Who was St. George of England? And how did the dragon slayer with blood on his hands become a Christian saint? How did St. Andrew of Scotland, one of Jesus' disciples, make it all the way from the Holy Land to Scottish soil? St. David of Wales is the lesser-known saint, yet he represents an entire nation. So how did he become so powerful? And how was St. Patrick of Ireland, arguably one of the most celebrated saints, survived the bloody war between Catholics and Protestants? But before I begin my quest to find out who these patron saints were, I need to go back to basics. I need to know what a saint is and how a saint attains the powerful position of patron. Since the 13th century, the Pope in Rome has claimed the exclusive rights to decide who should become a new Christian saint. The late John Paul II created over 400. But in Kirby, on the outskirts of Liverpool, new saints are made every day. The Carrara family have been manufacturing saints to sell to churches for nearly 100 years, and Dorothy is the latest in the family line keeping the tradition going.
That's St. Martin.
St. Martin.
This is St. John. We've got St. Joseph and the Child at the back.
Yep.
St. Francis of Assisi.
Yep.
We've got St. George here. That could take me about 2 hours to paint it.
So that's George.
Yes.
How about Patrick?
Patrick is here.
That one looks pretty serious to me.
Now, here's St. Jude, who we use for St. Andrew.
Oh, right. So you don't have a separate cast
No.
for St.
Andrew, no.
You just make it up out of one of St. Jude?
Yes.
Right, okay. So there's one more that we've got to find. It's
Yes, St. David.
St. David.
And we haven't got a mould for a St. David,
Yeah.
so we use St. Patrick.
Oh.
We put a different hand on,
Yeah.
and then we put a dove on his shoulder, and we paint this one in red and cream.
Out of the patron saints, which one's the most popular?
Patrick.
Patrick, which is the least popular.
I would say Andrew.
How fast do you shift the St. George's off the shelves? Do they do quite well?
Quite a few.
Do you feel in some way you're involved in keeping the memory?
faith going.
The faith, yeah. Yeah, because you are really, on one level, a saint maker. The other saint maker, there's the Pope and then there's Dorothy.
Yeah.
Saint makers. Saints are exemplary Christians who are said to act as middlemen between God in heaven and believers on earth. In the 14th century, a formal process for saint-making arose. To get on the approved Roman Catholic list today, the first thing that you need to be is dead, and it has to be proved that you led a life of incredible holiness. The final must is the ability to perform miracles. Patron saints give special protection to particular places or people. When they protect an entire nation, they're transformed into powerful icons.
Dragon is staggering, and he's gone!
My journey to discover our patron saints begins on the 23rd of April, St. George's Day, with perhaps the ultimate protector, the knight and battler, St. George.
Can we have, once again, 3 cheers for St. George? Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip hip!
The most popular image of St. George is that of a knight in shining armour, riding on a white horse, slaying a dragon and rescuing a fair maiden. And this is still a big part of the legend of St. George. And here on St. George's Day in Bedford, the legend is very much alive and kicking. For Christians, the 23rd of April marks the day it said George died on earth and was born again in heaven. Here at Bedford, there was no sign of George the Christian saint, only George the chivalrous knight. And it was in battle with the Crusaders in the Middle Ages that George proved his worth in the role of protector. How important was it for the Crusaders to feel that there was somebody protecting and watching over them? Why was that important?
The Crusaders and St. George had a pretty intimate relationship. Basically, he was a soldier saint, and therefore he was someone they could look to for help. I think it's part and parcel of what saints actually mean in the Middle Ages. In a way, they're kind of a conduit between man and God. They're kind of the middle man, if you like. And they're the people that are seen as being the channel through which God can make his power work on earth. So St. George is there, effectively, to make things happen, to produce miracles, and to help Crusaders on their path. Probably the most famous moment in the First Crusade was when St. George intervenes, as at what's known as the Great Battle of Antioch. It's the moment when the First Crusade is really in the balance. Contemporary accounts tell us that George was one of 3 saints who appeared in the midst of this battle to help the Crusaders win victory. What we see happening with crusading, the idea of holy war, violence that's accepted by Christianity, is that the Church is conscious that they can use imagery of saints to endorse this idea. And George is a very useful example of this. He's someone that the Crusaders can look to and say, OK, here is a saint, here is someone who's the absolutely holiest form of Christian you can be. And he was a soldier, he was a fighter. And this endorses in their mind, this makes a realization in their mind that you can fight and you can still be a Christian.
So it's almost as if George becomes a legitimating image for genocide.
Absolutely.
And the Church sponsors that.
Yes, they're conscious of this, that he's an important tool in this process.
So it seems George, the iconic Christian, was a useful tool for Crusaders to wage bloody war on Islam. But who was George? Was he a real person? And where did the people of medieval England learn about him? One book from the 13th century holds some of the answers. The Golden Legend is a compilation of the stories of the saints' lives. It's a mixture of fact and fiction, enhanced by medieval spin doctors elevating the saints' importance. It became the most widely read book after the Bible, and it tells me one great revelation. George wasn't English, he was born in Cappadocia, now in modern-day Turkey. And other sources say George was a famous Roman soldier feared for his bravery in battle. If it was in the Holy Land that the Crusaders called upon St. George to be their protector, I was beginning to wonder what other secrets the Middle East might unlock. Long before George became the patron saint of England, he was already highly revered here in the Holy Land. So this is where I've come, to find out what lies behind this mysterious figure. The first Crusaders scaled the city walls of Jerusalem to attack Islam and reclaim this holiest of cities in the name of Christianity. I was told to look for St. George inside the walls of the Old City in the Christian quarter and to find a Greek Orthodox father called Dr. Atalahana, a Palestinian nationalist. He could tell me of the passion held for St. George. Why is St. George so important